Hey everybody, happy Friday evening. Today we are joined by our good pal and buddy, Jose. I am one of your co-hosts, Mike Barrera. Jose, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, man. It's great to be back. I want to give you a huge thank you to you and Dave. A nice little shout out about 2 months ago, the birth of my son, Benicio
Yes.
Nunez, which we're really excited. He's right now with his mom, just hanging out. So just really excited to finally start diving back into what life was like before having number two.
Yeah, I know. I posted today that I was gonna go solo, and you jumped right on. You're like, "Hey, I'm free. I'm available." It's like good because I know you've been busy with your child. Congratulations again. Like I said, it's awesome stuff. So I'm happy to have you back because I know Dave is out with Gillingham right now on their little road trip for the weekend. So I'm happy to have you on board. We have a lot to talk about, as we usually do. The Philadelphia Union just kicked some ass against DC United this past week. And then this coming weekend, we got some familiar faces, which is the title of our show, coming back to Subaru Park. And Jose, another familiar face, joining us today. So it's kind of just a saying hello to old friends type of weekend vibe for us here. But before we do, I know Jose, you and I have a lot to discuss. We're going to go to the sponsors, get those things taken care of. We have some new sponsors, Jose, since the last time you joined us. So some
Damn.
interest. I know we're just up and coming now. First up, we have if you go to subscribe to our YouTube channel, you can actually win a Brian Dawkins poster. You can at least get a chance to win a signed Brian Dawkins poster. So that's the first thing. Now, the sponsors, we have Statement Games. You get statementgames.com for a fun new way to fancy sports and entertainment. You can win good cards and prizes. It's free to sign up at statementgames.com. The next one we have is some of our more recently new ones. The Vinny's Pizza and Restaurant, Allentown, PA. They serve up Italian cuisine, including pasta, pizza, burger, sandwiches, and more, available for pickup or delivery. Order today at vinnyspizzapa.com. And our new sponsor, Stuffed to the Grills at 6750 Iroquois Trail number 5 in Allentown, PA. That's stufftothegrills.com. You can check out their funky Cubano, sweet chili shrimp po' boy, and house-made meatloaf. So check those two out. I believe they're actually right next to Vinny's Pizza as well. So you can get both best of both worlds. And last but not least, we have the AATSportsNetwork.com/shop for all Sports Network gear, apparel, cups, mugs, whatever you want to do, all right there. Check it out. Okay,
Mike,
Jose?
Mike,
Yes,
this is
go
what
ahead.
appearance number five or so for me, six at this time at this point. How do I get a freebie shirt from now on?
We're gonna have to. I feel like it's at this point we need to send you some sort of gear. Yeah, I think this might be your fifth show total, maybe sixth. I know you interviewed David Gussler with Charlotte, which was a great show, by the way. I thought you did great there.
Which he
And
might
then
come back. I made him a bet. Oddly enough, I made him a bet. I'm really pulling for that Charlotte team. It's kind of
me
endearing
too.
to watch a first year team. And you know what? If the bet is that if Charlotte doesn't make the playoffs, I will send him a Philadelphia Union jersey or shirt of some sort, and he has to come on the show and talk with us about our first playoff game.
Yeah.
And if Charlotte makes the playoffs, I will go ahead and buy a Mint City Collective shirt and wear it during during their playoff. I guess preview. So exciting. I think. Sorry to say it, Mike, but I sort of interjected and got you a guest for the first game.
I know you definitely pulled me right into the middle of that bet, which I'm fine with. I will be happy to host him on the show. He was a great guest last time around. Yeah, I'm pulling for Charlotte as well, mainly because I don't want Cincinnati to even come close to the playoffs because I'm afraid of them. Although I shouldn't be, I am. So I'm rooting for Charlotte so that way they can come to Super Park and we can take care of business there. But talking about taking care of business, the Union have had a plethora of news this past week. So first and foremost, we have the newest homegrown contract sign. I'm going to pull this up on my phone in 1 second to make sure I get his name pronounced correctly. Jeremy Raffanello. He's a Delran, New Jersey native, so local South Jersey, and just like I am. He had ties with Red Bulls too. And Jose, you and I were talking off air about the interesting way he's made his way to the Union. Can you share your thoughts on that whole process there?
You know, another tie to mention within PA, albeit a little further away from you, and certainly from me, but maybe a little closer where I used to live. He was a Penn State player, I think,
There
for a
you go.
year before he decided to go pro or whatever the situation is. I must admit, I'm still catching up on all the news, as you can imagine. A 2 month old keeps you busy as well
Of
as
course.
working. Just really interesting path, right? I forget who posted it. I don't want to give credit without really thinking about who said it. It might have been Parcero Philly. I can't remember, but
I think it
just
was.
really interesting path where the Union kept on passing on him and passing on him and passing on him, and now that we feel comfortable with him or want him, or maybe we're in this new era of Ernst Tanner and we value homegrowns more than going out into the market. Um, we signed him. He's ours. He's always been
Yeah.
ours, one of our own in a way. So it's really exciting to see another young face, hopefully compound some worth behind him, some equity behind him, and whenever it's time to flip him, we're good to go. Or if he's going to be a long mainstay like the Aronson brothers, great. All around, it can't hurt. I'm sure it was pennies to the dollar at this rate.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about last week, and hey, Moyo, thanks for joining us. You talked about last week. Oh, by the way, guys, if you comment on Twitter, I actually can't see it. It's only Facebook and YouTube. Just so if people comment on Twitter and they think I'm ignoring them the whole time, I actually can't make it out on the screen here. So there you go. So last show we mentioned how Harris was retiring, and it seemed like the Union were getting younger. They were starting to bring in these new crop of depth players to add to the roster, and I believe this is just another one of those pieces that's fallen into place. Ernest Tanner is preparing himself for the next steps. One of those next steps that we thought was going to happen was Kai Wagner going to Leeds to join Brendan Aronson and that really exciting group they have out there. That seems to be that's not the case according to Jonathan Tannenwald. He just released it about I think yesterday afternoon. Kai Wagner seems to be staying for the rest of the season, but that does not negate the fact that Jose Martinez and Kai Wagner will probably be gone within the next calendar year. And you have other excitement around Jack McGlynn, Paxton Aronson, Quinn Sullivan, etc. The Union are getting deeper and younger, which is a bit scary to think of how we can replace the talent that we have, but at the same time, you want to see your front office do exactly what they're doing. Would you agree? Do you like the way they're moving in this direction?
They are, and I outside of sexy season, I think I've mentioned it many times. Outside of sexy season, I don't know that Tanner has missed, and if he has, he's certainly made up for it with other signings.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I guess he's missed twice, or maybe I shouldn't say that with Mr. Bueno and Davo, not really panning out to maybe what we were expecting after the first couple of nice hits. It is what it is. I'm excited. I'm still a firm believer that the draft is unbelievably unreliable.
Sure.
Sure, it worked out for the folks in Charlotte with Mr. Bender out of Maryland. That's great. But ultimately, it is just such a wild card. And sure, we benefited from it bringing in Mr. Blake. But outside
Yeah.
of that, it's just very tough to get value out of that. So trading away those picks for allocation money or whatever type of, resource, it's to me just the way to go, and ultimately the way that we've decided to build. And I don't see this backbone breaking anytime soon, and Tanner's really just building a firm foundation.
Uh, Absolutely agree. A lot to touch on there. I mean, one of the things you mentioned was Tanner, and we trust him to make the right move, right? Yes, you have Orvik, not, complete bust, right? You have Davo, didn't see the field more than maybe 20 minutes or so. Riasco has been another one that's been kind of question mark. Bueno, obviously, you mentioned as well. But we do have a significant amount of trust now in the front office that we didn't have prior. So that's one of the things to kind of touch on. But when in terms of what we've seen so far from the players that he has brought in, and you mentioned Bueno, I'll go back to that as well. The Union too have been basically starting him recently. He's finally kind of gotten himself into form. He scored, I believe, 4 goals in the last 6 games, so he's starting to become more relevant for that particular squad because early on in the season nobody really was blown away by his performance. So it's great to see him finally kind of make a name for himself. Riasco really hasn't done anything from what I've seen. I don't even know if he's scored. Maybe he's scored 1 goal so far for the Union too, who I know are fighting for a playoff spot down there. So, yeah, I'm excited for this depth. You mentioned the draft. I believe Jack Elliott was a draft pick.
Out of West Virginia.
As West Virginia. I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong. Keegan Rosenberry was also a draft pick, right?
Out of Georgetown.
Okay, so I'm going to loop it kind of full circle here. Keegan Rosenberry is coming back to Philly. We have
Yeah.
Zach McMath coming to Philly. And Zardes as well, who obviously wasn't a former Union member, but was familiar with us from playing with the Columbus Crew. That's next match you have up coming up. But I want to go back to Keegan. When that shoe dropped and he was sent away, what were your thoughts when Keegan left? What was it, 3, 4 years ago?
I was devastated, like,
I like it too.
I really, really like them. I absolutely like them. Would I trade him or go back in time, Avengers style, and switch things up and take the Infinity Stone and move it to a different timeline? Probably not. We're super
No.
happy with Kai and what he's done, and certainly in Bizo on the other side and Harriel. Uh, that I'm okay with it, and he's thrived. If why stay where you're not wanted? He's found himself a place that absolutely values him, absolutely gives him the playing time that he deserves, and it didn't hurt that he was next to Mr. Trusty before he got signed by Arsenal and then on loan to Birmingham. I think this past currently this season. So
Right.
no, I don't think I would change anything. It's one of those moves that you just kind of question Tanner for early on. We questioned him. If it
Sure.
was the Tanner time, I can't even remember. We questioned it, but
Um,
ultimately it paid off.
yeah, that the timeline of who was in charge of that move is a little fuzzy. I'll have to go back and check that out as well. But you're right. I remember the time. He was such a beloved player for that brief stint he had. He was such a reliable, not reliable. He was a great player or good player, I should say,
And
for being
local.
and local for being as young as he was. He had a lot of promise, right? He had a lot of promise as a player, and when you just ship him out like that, kind of caught everybody's attention. But as you said, it kind of worked out for the better for both parties, which is great. But before we get too far to Colorado, I do want to talk briefly about the DC United match. If you guys checked out on Twitter or Facebook or wherever else you get Union coverage, the Sons have been really, really stepped up and made a humongous trip down to DC. They took over that state, and there was some guy who was a DC fan who was posting about it the next day or two, just ranting and raving about how our supporter group basically out-supported our team at DC. Um, it's easy to talk about the good things with the DC match. I mean, what were your thoughts on the match? Do you think the score was misleading at all? What were your kind of vibes? Because we also just saw that the MLS apologized for messing up the handball on Elliot on that game.
Really interesting game. I
Yeah.
think early on I was a little nervous that things were not really going too well for the Union. Obviously, the score line at the end, with the full 90 plus whatever minutes, it should have ended at the 85th minute. To be honest with you, with that score line, was not that the early on it wasn't indicative of what we ended up with. And I really do think that that missed penalty kick, which I wholeheartedly believe it was a penalty kick. Bias aside of everything here and back there and over here, for the listeners, a poster and a jersey that are hanging on my wall. I think that would have swung the game in a completely different way. It's tough to say that. Obviously, I really do believe that shift in momentum maybe is what unraveled DC United and Wayne Rooney's side. But credit to the Union, they figured themselves out and worked out the kinks that game. That the early minutes were a little iffy, had a few chances, and then DC was pounding, 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 leading to that missed penalty kick. I think even referee Webb came down in a way and said, Howard Webb, former EPL referee, head of pro referees, I think, or some sort of organization, saying, yeah, the call was missed. So should have been a penalty. Could it have gone a different way? Sure. Did we end up with another 6 on top of the other 7, ending up with 13 on aggregate? Yes. Did we get a DC United fan crying for 40 minutes and I watched every
Yes.
single minute and
So
savored
nice.
every single minute? Yes. So all around all around a great week, and I'm so sorry to that fan. I don't even know his name, but I thoroughly enjoyed the rant for all literally 40 minutes. Twitter only lets you upload 10-minute videos, right?
Right. Yeah, something like that. He had to do like intervals of ranting, which are great. It was just the way he spoke was so was so perfect to just
He was eloquent. He was
he
really eloquent
he
too.
was very well spoken, but just the way he spoke was just so disappointed. It wasn't even upset. He was just so disappointed with what everything was going on around him. But yeah, so the Union obviously they win that big game, and then the Union 2 squad destroys New England 5-1. So you had these two clubs on the same weekend scoring 11 goals, which is an incredible weekend for the Union. But yeah, it's easy to look back now in hindsight. It's like, oh well, the Union probably would have beaten them anyway. But you're coming off the FC Dallas loss. You really have now lost 2 of 3 games, 2 of those away as well. You kind of were afraid this was a trap game. You're going to come home or come to DC and like, oh well, we took care of them already. We should take care of them again. And they almost, went down 1-0 early. So I'm happy they turned it around. The goals themselves were great. I thought they were good goals. What was your favorite goals of the four that night?
Uh, Man, well, we have six to choose from. Yes, Eric.
There's a
All we
all we
do
do
is
is
score.
I like it.
Um, Honestly, any by Carranza. It's
Yeah,
no secret. I am a big fan of Julian Carranza. I think when we were first doing the previews of the season, I was very loud and I was very clear to you and Dave. This man is on a mission. Coming from a dysfunctional Miami team, he is going to be a force to be, a force, just an absolute force. And boy, has he showed it after only, God, I mean, it's unbelievable. Any goal by him, I was just thoroughly enjoyed it. Just
yeah.
incredible performance by him. Hat trick, right? Yeah, hat trick.
He got a hat trick. The second, so he's, I believe, the second player in history who's gotten a hat trick against the same team twice, or something along those lines. It's incredible that he was able to do that. And it's not like it was a fluky goals. I mean, he went out and earned those goals, especially when he went to press the defender and kind of left that keeper looking really dumb, more dumb than he already did that night. But yeah, Carranza's been great, and the fact that Miami every single time he plays is just kind of punching themselves in the face. Seeing him perform at such a high level is incredible. I love it. I think so far, I love seeing that Ua continues to score. He continues to find the back of the net. And listen, Corey Burke has been putting him in the net recently. He's got a couple goals lately. I like to see that Corey is actually finally stepping to that level. I know people say, well, he got robbed from the Jamaican call up. That's kind of eating at him. Maybe he feels kind of bothered by that. I don't care what it is. I don't. As long as he's playing the way he is, I'm fine with that. Because as your third striker, you don't expect too much, but you still want him to be a quality. And he's sure had his moments where you would say maybe he wasn't the best player on the field, but at the same time you'd say, hey, listen, he's doing his job. So I'm happy to see Corey Burke do well, and again, like I said, the Union took care of business. Huge win on the road. What felt like a must win, to be honest with you, because if they lost that game or tied that game, it would have been chaos on Twitter. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And to your point, to Corey, I'm one of his biggest critics. You know that. Dave knows that. I'm not a not a huge fan of him, and that's okay. I can be a
Yeah,
critic, and ultimately, I'm taking it back. He did well. He did very well, and you're right. The one thing that concerns me, I must admit, is Mikel Ua. 60 minutes at a time. Is that all we're doing right now? And that's totally fine if that's the case. Is it
yeah,
load management? Is it the switch of the weather from the European side to now the American side, going through these heat waves? Is he going to increase his minutes as it gets colder, or are we going to scale it back? I'm intrigued to learn more about that, and I hope that any journalist who actually has a chance to ask questions during the pressers, I don't know if that's you, Mike, or Dave. Um, I'm intrigued. What's it going to take to get Ua to actually play a full 90? Not that we absolutely need it. If it's a 6-0 game, my gosh, take him out. Totally get that.
yeah,
But if it's a 1-0 game we're losing, I want him in. The full 90. We need him because it's no secret that the drop off from Carranza and Ua to Burke is pretty
yeah.
big.
It's
Uh,
noticeable. Yeah.
it's
Hmm.
very noticeable, despite him being in form. It's it's concerning me. It's
Sure.
obviously we're still a few weeks away from the MLS playoffs. I'm excited. I know that if they were to start now, we'd have a bye, and then we'd be waiting for the winner of Red Bulls in Orlando, manageable game. But I just want to know what the answer is. But alas, whatever they're doing is working. 13 goals
Yeah.
in 2 games against DC United. I actually had a couple of friends from where I used to live in Chambersburg, right up I-95, that went to that
Mhm.
game celebrating someone's birthday, and they're DC United fans, so they
Oh
got a
no.
show, but for the wrong team.
Oh no, that's a shame. What a terrible birthday. No, yeah. So it's funny because Eric mentions here the banana that Corey Burke. So people who didn't see the banana moment, so Corey scores and he goes and runs the sidelines and gets a banana from the trainers and he eats it. People are like confused as hell. What happened? Apparently he had some sort of racial issue against Chicago in Chicago. I didn't read the whole story, but essentially it was a racial kind of stance, which is great, But Corey's feeling himself, which is phenomenal for our club because after Ua and Carranza, you get worried that they can't put out the offensive production they want to if they are tied 1-1, if they're down 1-0, like you mentioned. So, but enough about Corey Burke.
I
One of the
thought it was a
yeah.
hard boiled egg.
Oh, did you? No, it was a banana.
I was like,
It was-
is that a hard boiled egg? Like, what's going on here? Is he that hungry? Like, that's weird. I don't know what that gives you energy wise.
No, there was a banana. So for those who remember the Titans, it's Coach Boone had a scene where he eats a banana. It was a racial thing. I don't know if that's where he got that from. I don't know if it was something maybe that was said to him that kind of tied into the banana. Whatever it was a quiet but strong message, which I applaud. So
Interesting.
good for Corey. But as we enter now this next week, we had a week off. The players finally got some rest. According to Joe Tanzi on Twitter, it looks like everybody's healthy, ready to go. We have Colorado coming over. Colorado has allowed 40 goals. I believe they've only scored 37, so we do expect them to maybe give up a goal or two. We don't really play Colorado ever. I mean, what is your concern having them come here to home, which is, I think both of us are going to agree it's a great thing. And what is your concern with not really having much of a feel for them as a team?
It's one of those games that you just don't know who's going to show up, right? Yes, it's great that we've had this week to rest, though I would argue that we perform our best when we're at a quick clip. Case in point, that month that we had, like 4 games, or 5 games in a month? Like that was over the summer. It was unbelievable. And we ended up winning, and I think winning 4 and tying 1. I can't remember. Eric, you can be our fact checker on Facebook. But it's a deep team. I'm not gonna call them a good team. A lot of familiar faces. I'm terrified of Abubakar. That guy is a scary man. I'm not sure if he's not. He's got the scariest hair in MLS, I believe. But we'll see. I think we can manage. Is this a game? And I think we've been doing it more and more. Obviously, the DC United games are a bit of outliers, but are these games that we can start holding more possession than the other team, albeit our game typically lies on counter-attacking game football. So excited. I unfortunately will not be there. I've been just dishing off tickets as I'm still kind of getting the feel for having 2 kids and not wanting to leave my wife alone for that many hours at night with a 2-year-old and a 2-month-old. So I hope that Section 140 is as loud as ever.
So, okay, can I talk about 140 and the Keystone Ultras? They've been getting a lot of attention, I feel like, lately. They've been doing really well, just supporting them. People are just talking about them more often. If you don't go to games and you want to go to a game, I used to say sit in front of the away supporters. You get the Sons of Ben right there. But honestly, I say switch sides and go sit next to 140 if you can, or in 140 if you really want to. The energy that comes out of them is insane.
I want to be super clear. I'm not a member of the Keystone Ultra. I certainly appreciate and love everything that they do. In fact, I would love to join them at some point if that comes to be. My son, I come home singing their songs because they're that toxic. Toxic as in catchy. They're just catchy. I come home singing them, and now I have a 2-year-old singing half of the songs that they sing. So yeah, I strongly recommend if you are coming for your first game, go to 140. Don't be part of the cross arm army that is most of the river end. Just get into the game, start singing, start shouting. They sing, I think, like 5 or 6 songs, but they're 5 or 6 songs that are easy to know and easy to go through. And ultimately, they're just very welcoming. If you want to go up there and talk to them. Super nice guys. I strongly recommend it.
Yeah. Oh, well, here we go. Eric, I know, is also a 140 member. No part of 140, right? He's like, Eric's got to yell louder in 140 because clearly he has to make up for the rest of people. And yes, the ooh-ah chant does get stuck in my head. And when it first came out and that child was singing it from Twitter somewhere, it's just in my head all day, every single day, which I'm perfectly fine with. But
it's to the point. It's actually, Mike, to the point that 140 has its own tifos. We just had the Vecna one from Stranger Things not too long ago. Props to I think Twitter handle Smoke. I can't remember his name, but he's the one who typically takes care of those things. At least that's my understanding. So props to him. Eric maybe knows who I'm talking about, and he can just dig up his Twitter handle and just drop it in a comment. I want to give credit where it's due, if you don't mind, Eric. But Yeah, Eric's right. 140 is a blast. I recommend it. Just again, don't be part of the cross arm brigade and just get into it.
Yeah, I actually, it's funny. I saw Eric on a picture from 140. He was like, the crowd was going crazy. He was like in the back. I'm like, there's Eric. I see him. No, it's a great crowd. It's a good energy, and they have the trumpeter too. Occasionally, at times, up in that section. So from
From time to time, when
he
he's not
he,
having a show.
he makes an appearance, and he kind of goes with it. But when you're in the press box, which is, as you know, like up on that angle here, we're looking right down to 140. So I see you're the closest to me, really, in terms of the elevation, and you hear it perfectly. The trumpet comes into the press box perfectly. I love it. It's a great energy. It makes the river end that much louder. Because I know going back maybe 5 years ago, it just didn't have that overall intensity. It's starting to kind of get that more so, and hopefully it continues across the entire river end rather than just in that one like side corner. But going back to the game here, Jose, one of my college basketball buddies was talking about handicapping this game. He said, "Oh, what should I put the Union 3.5 goals? Should I put them 2.5 goals?" I'm kind of worried that they make it a 2-1 game. I don't think they're going to score 3 to 4 goals. I told him, I said, listen, we played DC United twice. We played Chicago once. None of those are good teams. We took advantage of them pretty well. I don't see us blowing out Colorado. I mean, and having somebody like Zardes on the other side who knows us well, I'm worried that he scores a goal. I know Keegan Rosenberry and all these players coming back facing the Union. I'm afraid that they play with a chip on their shoulder and they make this a very tough game. What's kind of your score prediction? Do you think 2-1, 2-0, or do you think that maybe the Union put another 5 spot on this team?
I think the 5 spots are done for the year unless we play DC United again. I can't fathom playing a team as bad as DC United again this year. And in fact, I don't think that they do. I think everybody else is just a mid table. I think Orlando is their highest seeded game or highest on the table left. I think Orlando in
I'll
2 weeks,
I'll,
3 weeks. I
I'll
can't
look.
remember. But no, I would not put the Union scoring more than 1 or 2 goals tops, and certainly. Moke from 140. Yep, he's a great guy.
Chris
Great
Anthony.
at tifos, I should say.
Yep, there
Um,
you go. Thank you, Eric.
yeah, thanks, Eric. 2-1. That's what I would say. I think we'll let one in, though. We're very close to Andre Blake getting another record with shutouts, I
Oh
believe.
my God,
So
I know.
just hopefully it's a 2-0 game, though.
Can I stop you right there with the 2
Yeah,
nothing? Austin's up 2-0 right now in LAFC. Just by
that's
the
great.
way.
That's great.
Eric's streaming big, 8-0 MLS record. Go big or go home. You know what? Why not, Eric? Let's go. Let's dream big here. So let's touch on Austin LAFC. Why am I talking about this game? For those who don't follow the Supporter Shield race, Austin is essentially tied with us neck and neck. They have been for some time now. LAFC is obviously the best team in the league. They just brought another signing from La Liga. They're just constantly growing with this roster full of talent. But they are currently down 2-0 to Austin, which is good for the Union, who currently sit 6 points back from them, if I remember correctly, right?
I think so.
Because I was watching that game when San Jose actually beat LAFC just this past week. So now this would be their second consecutive loss. And I know they have a game in hand on the Union, but being 3 points back, entering this weekend, that would be a pretty significant moment for us if we could then close that gap and earn that home win. But in terms of the schedule. So I'll pull up the schedule real quick. I know we want to make this a short, so only about 30 minutes before Jose mentions the little interesting fact from October that's coming around Philadelphia. So the Philadelphia Union, they host Colorado. They play Atlanta twice. They play Orlando, the Red Bulls. They play Charlotte, and they play Toronto. I'm actually a bit worried about that schedule because you're going to have
Yeah,
teams like Charlotte who are fighting for a playoff spot. Toronto is the 11th seed right now, but they're only 30 points, and Columbus is 35. So it's not like they're that terribly far off. There could be a scenario where they're fighting for that playoff spot at that, in the last week of the season. But I know statistically speaking, this is an easier schedule. And I say with quotation marks, easier schedule. But frankly, I'm a bit concerned that we drop at least one or two of these games. Maybe draw at least one.
yeah. I mean, going to Atlanta is always tricky when you play on that turf.
Agreed.
That's the asterisk of going to Atlanta that you always have to keep in mind.
Sure.
Completely forgot about the Red Bulls game. I guess that would be the highest seeded game at this point.
It's at Harrison too in New Jersey.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess I worry also about the Charlotte game, and Toronto is kind of like the Joker on the deck. You don't know what you're gonna get. They may be in that position, but that's before they did a big roster shakeup over the transfer window with bringing the 2 Italians and some other folks in. Now if they're to be a last seed and we face them potentially, or we end up against them at some point, I would be concerned. Toronto always has given us fits, and there's no player I dislike more in MLS than Michael Bradley. So
that's one thing I think a lot of Union fans can agree with. We all kind of despise him as a whole. I think one team that's quietly been creeping up the table has been Miami too. Miami's kind of been getting their stuff together recently. They've had some decent performances of late. I know Higuain scored some screamers of late as well, but they're currently above Columbus right now. And a team that you had mentioned, Jose, Montreal, way back when you said Montreal was going to be solid. They've also been pretty solid this year as well. They're in the second seed right behind the Union, but yeah, I have a little bit of concern as well. You only have 4 of the 7 games at home. I think you lose at least once in Atlanta, and maybe possibly you draw at the Red Bulls, which is fine. The Charlotte match, I think you could lose. I don't want to say that, but I do worry about Charlotte. We kind of kicked their ass the first time around. I could see some sort of revenge match, especially that late in the season. I could very well see them being hyped, ready for that match. So a little concerning there. But before we go, I know Jose, you want to mention something that's happening in October. Yeah, please. Before I know it's a short show, so please end the show.
News came out. I know I was really excited about it prior to the pandemic. It was going to be tight with the scheduling of it and the birth of my first son. Obviously, the pandemic threw it all out the window, but NBC will be doing their Fan Fest out in Philadelphia the 15th and 16th of October, if I remember the dates.
Yep.
Really exciting event. I was not able to make the one in DC, though. I lived so close to DC before moving to the suburbs of Philly that I was part of the Capital City Blues, the Manchester City supporters group, and they posted plenty of pictures. The Manchester City supporters or the Manchester, the mothership, they call it. they sent players out to come and meet with the group to make sure to do jersey signings, et cetera, et cetera. It looks like a fun event. It looks like a great event. I strongly encourage everybody to go. My understanding is that the experience was great. And frankly, I can't imagine that they'll ever come back to Philly again. I think they're just fulfilling a promise that they had from 2 years ago, finally being able to do it. I know it happened in LA a couple of years back. Or a year back, I think, when that was their first one back, or I can't remember, but I know they did one in DC, LA, and they were supposed to do Philly. So take advantage of it. If you're in the Philly area, those dates, make sure you go. Though, be mindful that it's also the weekend that the Cowboys are in town for the Eagles game. So it's going to be a mess in that city, but strongly encourage you plan your weekend around that event.
Well, people who are going to be around that weekend might be our friend Dave Miller, coming from England, because he is going to be going to the Cowboys-Eagles match. So if I don't see Dave at this event, I will try to make tailgate with him on that Sunday for the game. I'm probably not going to go to the game, but at least just be there to tailgate. Because, I mean, I have to see him. He comes this close to home. I have to make the trip to see him. So I know, Jose, you and I were talking about Dave, like, oh, you're going to be there. We got to get a picture. We got to have it. Got to meet up. We got to drink, have a beer or two, maybe a cigar. I know you like to have your cigars handy. So we'll definitely try to make an effort to see Dave, because who knows when he's going to come back to Philly, or, our friendly British friend out here. But we're going to close the show up. Oh, here we go. Eric's one last dig at another team. The Cowboys are shit, so yeah, it'll be a mess. You're right. They're not very good. They actually have been getting injuries like crazy of late, so we'll see how they do. But that's the other football. Jose, thank you for joining us on this short show this evening. Any last thoughts before tomorrow night's match?
No, just really, honestly, Mike, really appreciative of the opportunity. I enjoy this. I think it's fun. Something I hope to get into in the future when life allows me to. It's been a blast to getting to know you and Dave, Eric. I know I've met you. In fact, I think you said hello to me when I was at one of the games. So it sort of got me a little bit of notoriety. And in fact, I think I was with my wife at the time that game. And my wife was like, how do they know you? I was like, well, sweetheart, it's from this podcast I jumped on.
I'm kind of a big deal. I'm kind of
No,
Jose Nunez.
no. Jokes aside, super grateful. Excited for tomorrow's match. We'll see what
Yeah.
happens. I'm always cautiously optimistic, expecting the worst and hoping for the best, and we'll see
Yes.
what we get. Who knows? I mean, I was super optimistic for that Chicago game. You know what that got us.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. So tomorrow night, Dave, I know, is traveling with Gillingham, so he will be out of the picture for covering the match. I will also be away tomorrow night, but I should be coming back by the second half, if not the press conference. So both of us will be off the game, but I'll try to get the press conference notes out. But otherwise, the Philadelphia Union host Colorado Rapids tomorrow evening. Should be a great match, welcoming back Keegan Roseberry, Zach McMath, and Tyrese Maxey will be at the stadium as well. So fellow Sixer player there joining the Union fun. But otherwise, Jose, it's been a pleasure as always. I appreciate you joining us. And like I said, it's been great getting to know you. And go Union.
Go Union.
Doop.